Pastor James asked me to speak here several weeks ago before everything that fell apart that did. The Lord gave me a subject, contentment. And then everything happened last week that happened, and I questioned whether or not I should speak on contentment. Our God is consistent. God knows in advance what's going to happen. And he reaffirmed to me that I am to speak on that. And in today's sermon, if you want to call it that, in the teaching, we do a little time travel back into the past. So I think it's kind of appropriate right now to look into the future. In the future where we elect a Jewish president. He gets all excited on election night and he calls up his mother and says, Mom, I won the election. I'm going to be president. I want you to come to the inauguration. She goes, oh, son, I don't have anything that I could wear to that. Don't worry, Mom. I'll send you a tailor and he'll make you the perfect outfit. You'll be the joy of everybody there. But son, I know what they serve at those things and I only eat kosher food. Mom, I'm going to be president. I'll make sure it's all kosher for you. Just please come. It's really, really important to me. But I don't know how to get there. Mom, I'll send you a limo. You'll ride in luxury. You'll go up to the Capitol steps. You'll sit in a prominent spot. Please come to the inauguration. Okay. So on the day of the inauguration, the limo pulls out. She comes out and she is just dressed to the nines. The tailor did a fantastic job. She gets in the limo. She goes into Washington, D.C., to the Capitol steps. She goes up and they sit her down right between the former vice president and the Supreme Court justice. She's sitting there and she's just looking around. She's watching the whole proceedings. Then her son gets up to take the oath. And she elbows the two around her and she goes, you see that man over there? The one with his hand on his Bible? His brother didn't waste his life. He's a doctor. So with that, I want to introduce you to the verses that the Lord wanted me to focus on. Philippians 4:11-13. Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned to whatever state I am to be content. I know both how to be abased, I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I'm instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This is going to be our focus. How to find out how Paul can be content given the things that went on in his life. And as I was doing this study, the Lord interjected into my mind a Jewish mother talking. And so now, through the magic of your imagination and computers and my lack of knowledge of how quantum theory works with string theory to develop quarks, we're able to go back in time and watch the Apostle Paul's mother as she visits with some of her friends. So let's listen into this and see what she has to say.
Wanted your son to be a doctor. so appreciate. Oh, my boy. We sent him to the best. He studied under Gamaliel. Outstanding he was too, my boy Saul. I told him one day when he told me he was going to make a trip to Damascus, I said, why? To root out those rebels on the way, those blasphemers. I told him that he shouldn't go on this trip. Our family wasn't the type to travel a lot. Oi, did he listen to me? Did he pay attention to his mother? No, he said he had to go. He was doing the work of the Pharisees, and I would not understand. I am just his mother. Well, he went on that trip, and despite what I said, I didn't hear from him for over 3 years. And then he shows up in Jerusalem, claiming that he was blinded on the way to Damascus. Then after he got into the city, he was healed. And he went to the desert for 3 years. Well, that's what he told them in Jerusalem. That's what he told them schmucks in Jerusalem. They may believe that, but do I believe that? Do I look like I was born yesterday? You know what I think? I think that robbers hit him over the head and he got into too many wineskins while he was wandering around in the desert. That's what I think. Such a despicable thing that he would do to his mother. That's when my baby boy came home to Tarsus for 3 years to heal from the beating that the robbers had given him. For 3 years, he would come and sit at my table while I worked day and night to nurse my boy back to health. I sacrificed everything for my boy. The first time he sat at my table, when I was bringing out dessert, it was baklava. You know, his favorite. Ever since he was a little boy, I would sacrifice so much to bring him the things that he loved. I will never understand why he would do this to me. Forgive me. I shouldn't be complaining and worrying about my suffering. It is nothing compared to what my boy went through. Oh, where was I? Oh, that was right. I was bringing out the baklava when I asked him, why did you not tell me what had happened on the road to Damascus? And where were you for those last 3 years? Do you know what he told me? Let me tell you what he told me. He told me that some carpenter from Nazareth, who was supposed to be dead, blinded him. Finally, I find out who hit him over the head, that despicable carpenter. Then he said that he spent the next 3 years in the desert studying all that this carpenter said and did. My poor boy Saul, who in their right mind would try to learn anything from anyone that hit you over the head? Oh, what this carpenter did to my boy. Even if he was studying, do I mean so little to him that he could not even write me a letter or send me a message or tell someone to tell me? I'm only his mother. I am not important. I only kept him by my side day and night, stayed up him at nighttime when he was sick. I raised him. I kissed his boo-boos as he grew. And even now, when he is around, I feed him. Now he tells me that this carpenter taught him about love. Love? What about love for your mother? Am I not to have love from my child? Oh, what's a mother to do? Then my son tell me, and this hit me like a dagger in my heart. He said that he is now a part of the way. That carpenter must have hit him really hard. My Saul would never join such a group of blasphemers. Then he told me that he needed to go on the voyage to tell others about this carpenter. Our family does not go on voyages, and I told him so. We are too far from the sea to do that. After all, it is 5 Sabbath walks from the sea from where we live. But did he listen to me? No. What do I know? I am only his mother. Oh, what is a mother to do? Well, he went on that voyage, and there were others, I hear, telling all he met about this dead carpenter. Did he write me? No. I am only his mother. I am nothing. I am of no importance. I heard that he had changed his name to Paul. Paul? What is wrong with Saul? His father, Matthew, may his name be a blessing. His father, Matthew, gave him that name. He was named after the first king of Israel. Why would he do this to his mother? One day, someone did show me a copy of a letter that he wrote to a church in Corinth. He writes to a church, but does he write to his mother? He told them about the life that he was living. What a life! Deserving of somebody that would talk about a dead carpenter, I tell you. But not my son Saul. He states that 5 times, the Jews that he went to talk to gave him 40 stripes minus 1. That's my son Saul. He always has to make things more than what they are. Why did he not just say 39 stripes? 40 stripes minus 1 does sound a lot worse than 39, does it not? Oh, I did try to teach my boy. Oh, what's a mother to do? Then he talks about the Romans beating him with rods 3 times, and they even stoned him once. You remember me telling him not to go to sea. Did he listen to me? No! Well, he went to sea, and he was shipwrecked 3 times. And he even spent a day and night floating around in there with the sharks. He talks about perils everywhere, of the water, of robbers, of his own countrymen, of the Gentiles in the city, in the country, in the sea, and even from false brethren. He speaks of weariness a lot, sleeplessness, hunger and thirst, of being cold and naked. I told him not to go on those voyages, but does he listen to me? No! Oh, what's a mother to do? Then yes, oh yes, then I see a copy of a letter that he has wrote to the church at Philippi. Do you know what he said in that letter? He said in that letter that he wrote to them when he couldn't even write one to his mom, he said that he was content. Content? With everything that had happened to him and went wrong. He's content. Oh, that carpenter really hit him hard. Oh, what's a mother to do? I should be so lucky that my son was a pig farmer. I just hope that he regains his senses enough before he really loses his head.
Cindy did a great job, didn't she? So what's a mother to do, right? So I want to talk about those 3 scriptures that we started with. I'm going to take them verse by verse, and some of the words we'll delve into a little deeper, trying to figure out what Paul was really stating. First, Philippians 4:11. I do not speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. content. Do we really know what that means? So since that was what this was all going to be about, I decided I need to go out and get the definition. So I looked in the English dictionary. First, it says, in a state of peaceful happiness. Oh, I like the sounds of that. I want to be in peaceful happiness. The synonyms for that word, contented, satisfied, pleased, gratified, fulfilled, happy, cheerful. Now, there were a number of different definitions, but there was two that I thought applied. So number 2, a state of satisfaction. Kind of like what I feel after I have a good dinner. There's a state of satisfaction, and I want to keep that. Synonyms, contentment, contentedness. Don't you love when they use a derivative of the word that you're looking up to explain the word you're looking up? Makes it perfectly clear. Satisfaction, fulfillment, happiness. Now, I really like the idea of content meaning happy, cheerful, and happiness. Because that's where I want to be. I want to be happy. I want to be cheerful, full of happiness. But that doesn't, I look at what Paul had happen in his life. Can he really be happy about being flogged? Can he really be happy about being beaten with rods? So there had to be something more. So I look on into the Greek definitions. And I apologize up front for the Greek scholars around that really know how to pronounce these words. The first one, and this is the one that Paul uses in this writing, autarkes, self-compliant, contented, translated as content. Now, Paul uses this so much in the New Testament, this is the only verse it's in. It's unique just to this verse. But looking at that definition really doesn't tell me how it's any different than our thinking of content. But it is derived from 2 Greek base words. Autos is the first one. Cause, he, himself, self, myself, or selves. It gets used in those different connotations. The second Greek word is archeo. Enough, suffice, and sufficient. So I grabbed the words that I thought applied best to this. Myself, enough, and sufficient. So you can take a look at those, put those in line. Well, it's enough for myself, or myself is enough. Maybe I'm sufficient, right? No, you need to put it in the right context for how English would use those words. And you come up with enough for myself and sufficient for myself. Okay, I can apply that to this verse. So I substitute the phrases in, and he writes, not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am, it is enough for myself, or enough for me. Or you can say, not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned that in whatever state I'm in, it is sufficient for myself, or it's sufficient for me. Either way, have you heard anything about happiness? English, we combine content and happiness together. If you're content, you're happy. The Greeks separate it. You have to be content before you can become happy. But you can be content and not really be happy. But you're content. All right, let's move on to the next verse. Philippians 4:12. I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I'm instructed both to be full, to be hungry, both to abound and suffer need. You ever wonder what abased means? Now, I read this verse, and I've read it many times, and I've always taken it and said, okay, abased and abound, and it ends up with abound and suffer need. So obviously, abased means suffered need, right? Makes perfect sense to me, until I looked it up. I looked abased up, and what we have up here is actually a base, to cast down, to reduce low, to depress, to humble, to degrade, and applied to the passions, the rank, the office, and conditions. To abase someone is to put them down. You can take a look at whatever the passion is. How in the world could you love rocks? I mean, that's so dumb. Now that's abasing someone, putting them down for what they love. The rank. Everybody, whether you realize it or not, falls into ranks, a different level. And you go to someone that's a higher rank than you are, you have no brains to be in that position. You can't do that. You can't even do the things that are below me. That's abasing somebody. How about condition in life? I don't know how many people I've heard talk about the homeless people. They just should pick themselves up and move up. They deserve what they're getting. There may be some out there that do, but there are many of them that don't. But you can abase somebody. And all it is really is how to raise yourself up, because you don't feel good enough about yourself. But that is what happens. In my own life, I have been abased. I left Precision Cast Parts in Portland to come to Central Oregon because of the way that my boss treated me. And I couldn't get that fixed. I couldn't get him to think of it any other way, and I couldn't get him to change his way of operation. So I left, came here. I retired from Schlosser Castings for the same reason. The boss who was over me at that time was putting me down, and I said, fine, I'm too close to retirement. So I retired. To be honest with you, I'm still searching for retirement. I'm still working, but that's beside the point. I turned away from being abased because I didn't feel I deserved it. And there are times that you need to do that. But Paul said that he learned to be abased, and he learned how to be content when he's abased. Now let's go further into this scripture and say instructed. Now, I am instructed both to be full and hungry, and both to abound and suffer. I know what instructed means. No problem there. Well, going through some of the commentaries, I read about it. One made me search a little deeper into that word, into the Greek translation of the word. Mueo means to instruct, instruction, instructor, learned, learn. Doesn't sound any different than what I think of it. But again, it comes from a base word that means something a little different. Mysterion, a secret or a mystery. And this commentary talked about Paul having a secret of how to be content. Now, my mind going off on a tangent like it often does, I'm thinking, okay, this is the secret. In order to find out the secret, you've got to be part of the club. In order to be part of the club, you got to know the handshake. So you got to go inside, outside, tickle the palm, and throw it over your shoulder. So you've got to know that before I can tell you, because if I tell you before that, it goes really bad. So remember that. It's inside, outside, tickle the palm, and throw it over your shoulder. You got that? Okay, so now I can tell you about this. So you think about that. He's got a secret of how to be content. So let me go through the last verse. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, it's a personal thing of mine that when people use this verse, there's sometimes I get irritated because I think they take it out of context. They take it out, they want to go do something. Christ is going to enable me, I'm going to go do it. That's not exactly how I see this verse. Because if I see this verse that I can go do anything I want to do and Christ is going to help me, why don't I go over on the top of Monkey Face, jump off, and say, Jesus, help me fly. I just have this picture of Jesus appearing next to me as I'm going down, going, what were you thinking? You're supposed to apply the whole book. You shall not tempt the Lord your God. Oh, I'll talk to you in a minute. And he leaves. So, again, my mind, I go to my favorite translation. And that's the DLB unauthorized paraphrase. I can do all things that he wants me to do through him that wants me to do them because he strengthens me. And in my mind, that's what this verse says. When Jesus comes out there and tells me to go do something, he will provide everything I need to go do it. When I go out there and I'm going to do something, it's up to me. Maybe Jesus is going to help me, but he might not. It's up to me. And when it's up to me, that's a scary spot. I don't want to be in that spot. So let's take a look at all three of these verses in the DLB unauthorized paraphrase. Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am in, it is sufficient for myself. Verse 12, I know both how to be cast down, to be reduced low, to be depressed into the ground, to be humbled, to be degraded. I know how to abound everywhere, and in all things I am instructed with secret knowledge on how to both be full, to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. And in 13, I can do all things that he wants me to do through him that wants me to do them because he strengthens me. Amen. That's the way I look at it. That's the way that makes sense to me. And when you look at what happened to Paul, I have to look at it in that fashion. Not that he's happy about what has happened in his life. To find out what happened in his life, let's go back to 2 Corinthians 11, verses 24 through 27. I have been flogged 5 times with Jews, 39 lashes. This is the Message Bible. Eugene Peterson did not embellish upon this thing, make it more dramatic. He just tells it like it is. Beaten by Roman rods 3 times. Pummeled with rocks once. I've been shipwrecked 3 times and immersed in the open sea for a day and a night. In 26, it's hard traveling year in and year out. I've had to ford rivers, fend off robbers, struggle with friends, struggle with foes. I've been at risk in the city, at risk in the country, endangered by the desert sun and sea storm, betrayed by those I thought were my brothers. I've known drudgery and hard labor, many a long and lonely night without sleep, many a missed meal, blasted by the cold, naked to the weather. That's what he went through. That's his life as he stepped out to witness about Jesus to everyone that he came across. That's not a life that I really want. I mean, it's not on my top 10 list to be flogged. It's just not where I want to go. And I really doubt that Paul put it on his top 10, his bucket list. But Jesus called him to do this. And in doing so, he provided everything that he needed to get through it. I have issues with some people that I know that talk about how great life is if you just claim God's control on it. It's going to be good. Not necessarily. God's less concerned about your comfort than your soul. And he's less concerned about your comfort than the soul of that person that you're going to meet. His plan is the bigger plan. So the question that comes down, how can Paul feel that these situations are sufficient for him? He looks on things as a child who has total faith in his father. As a young boy growing up, I was taken down, I got the shots. I cried every time. I didn't like them. I never questioned whether my parents loved me. I got pneumonia 3 times 1 year. Ended up in the hospital every time. They put me in a bed with plastic over the top of it and pumped it with oxygen. My parents had to leave. They didn't allow the parents to stay overnight in the hospital at that time. And as a little boy, not feeling good, can't get a good breath, and watching my parents walk out of the room, I fell asleep crying. But I never questioned that they loved me, that they were trying to do their best for me. It was not a situation I liked, not one that I would ever want anyone to go through. But I had faith that they had a plan for me, a plan that was best for me, even though the local circumstances were not good. So now with that question, how can you look on with total faith to the horrible things that happen to us in this life? Well, let's go to Philippians 3:13. Paul says a lot of things in Philippians regarding this. In 13 it says, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended." Here he is saying he doesn't have all the answers. He has not achieved the top rung on the ladder. He's still learning. He's still growing. And each and every one of us have to be in that situation. We still need to learn. We still need to grow. We don't have all the answers. But one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. Forgetting those things that are behind. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time forgetting the stuff in my past. I don't feel Paul was totally talking about forgetting, like it never happened. What I think he's talking about is don't dwell on it. Take Peter. He's in the boat, going across the sea, middle of the night. And the disciples see Jesus going out for his midnight stroll across the water. And they call, "Oh, it's a spirit." No, it's me. Don't worry. And Peter looks out and said, "Lord, if it's you, call me out so that I may come to you." Great. He said, "Come on over." So he steps out of the boat, starts walking over to Jesus, and his feet start getting wet. And at that point, everybody teaches how Peter started looking at the water and took his eyes off of Jesus, which I believe is true. But it's also possible he looked at his feet, then looked back at the boat and said, "I never should have got out of that boat." And bloop, down he goes. What was he doing? He was concentrating on the boat, not on Jesus. Not on what his future could be if he walked all the way over to Jesus, but what he did wrong in the past, what he felt he did wrong. Let me give you a slight different example. This is my life. I'm going through life. I'm going through just great. And then I remember I messed with the drums over here, and I remember how angry Andy got at me for that. And thinking about that drum, those drums over there, I can't do that. And all of a sudden, bang, I hit something that I would have seen if I hadn't been focused on my path so deeply. We can't dwell on the past. We can't change the past. We can learn from it. And that's all we can do is learn from it. And it's not just the negative things you can get hooked up on. Example, first kiss I had with my wife. Oh, that was so wondrous. That was glorious. And I want to go back there again. I want another kiss like that. That's good stuff. But if I sit there all day long just thinking how good that first kiss was, I'm never going to get a second one. I've got to be looking forward to the opportunity of that second kiss so I can repeat the experience. Oh, it's fantastic. I didn't dwell on that. We're married now, so that's great. So, Paul talks about looking forward to the things that are ahead. He's got another verse, in Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue And if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. He doesn't say in the past. He's talking about the future. Now you take a look forward right now in our lives. You listen to the news. They're not telling you anything good coming down the road. They're telling you about bad things that are coming down. They're telling you bad things that might happen. I pointed out to Pastor James, I have a news app. I scroll through that quite often. They talk about this asteroid that's coming towards the earth. It's going to crash into us. And you read about it. It's within a cat's whisker of earth in cosmic terms. It's going to be 1,000,000 miles from earth when it gets close. Is that something we're going to worry about? Oh, but if it had hit earth, this is what would have happened. What? They're trying to rile you up. They're trying to get you worried about it. God doesn't want you. He's got that. Don't worry about that. So, if you sit here and you concentrate on all the virtuous things that Paul mentions in his verse there, that means we should be happy, right? Because we have hope. We know where we're going. The true thing that we're heading for is life with Jesus after we go through that door. That is a glorious thing to grab onto and hold onto and pray for and hope for. We have hope. But should we always be happy? Well, if we're going to go with the full Bible, no, we shouldn't always be happy. The Bible tells us we're not supposed to be happy all the time. What? We're not supposed to be happy. Why are we Christians? We're Christians because we believe in Jesus. And God put forth in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1, and particularly verse 4, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. And in verse 4, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. God gave us the emotions that we have because we were formed in His image. We are to have times where we weep. We are to have times where we mourn the loss that we have. That time of mourning is different for every person, depending on who you are and depending on what you've lost. I can still remember the morning that I got the phone call about my son. I can visualize where I was sitting, the tears that I cried. I had a time of mourning. And I'll be honest with you, that time of mourning lasted longer than a year. I still had hope. I still had times when I laughed. But I was still mourning for my son. That is appropriate. Should never be ashamed because you mourn over a loss. What you should be afraid of and do everything not to do is get stuck in the past. Concentrate on the past, the hurt that you felt, the times that you did things wrong. That's the past. Accept the past as it is, learn from it, turn forward, and look to the hope. Now, how do you know we're supposed to mourn? How do you know you're supposed to cry? Because God cries. He mourns with us. How do I know that? The shortest verse in the Bible. John 11:35. Jesus wept. He cried. Situation is, he's going over to where Lazarus' family is. Lazarus had died, and he had been buried. And he's approaching up there. Mary chewed him out. If only you had been here. Martha chewed him out. If only you had been here. He gets up. There's mourners everywhere crying. And he wept. Did he weep because he had lost Lazarus? No. He knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He knew the joy that everybody was going to have. But he still wept. because he felt their pain. He understood where they were at. God weeps with us when we have pain. That's where our God is all different than any other God that people worship in the world. Our God knows us, sympathizes with us, empathizes with us, loves us. He cries when we cry. He understands everything that we've gone through. So let's take a look at 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 through 5. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble with the comfort which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also abounds through Christ. Two things come out of this verse to me. One, God comforts us. He's there with us. Jesus wept. God weeps when I weep. And he does it when you weep. He knows how you're feeling. He knows that you hurt. The second thing that comes out of that, in verse 4, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble. If I come to a parent now who has lost a child, I know how they feel. I can sympathize and empathize with them far more than before my son passed away. I can touch them through Christ touching me and reaching out to them. If we go through a difficulty, we need to look at the possibility that that difficulty, whatever it is part of God's plan. That we need to learn from it, how God is going to work through us. Because it may be down the road that we're going to be able to touch somebody, help them to get through their difficulty. God didn't put us in this world to be an island, but to reach out to others and help them and lift them up for Him, not for us, but for God, for Jesus. Got a friend whose sister was killed by a drunk driver. He had a tough time with that. Years upon years upon years having to deal with that. Looking back in retrospect, what came out of that drunk driver was the fact that, one, his sister, who had been diagnosed with terminal cancer the week before, she now did not have to go through the chemotherapy, the horrible treatment. It's bad as it sounds. That may have been a blessing for her to leave in that way. The other thing is that drunk driver became a Christian, went to the prisons, and is now witnessing to other prisoners. He has groups where he counsels other drunk drivers and tries to lead them to the Lord. Would that have happened if he had not done that? As horrible as it is, God turned it around to be something good. And God knew about that before it happened. So take a look at what happens in your life. God knew about it before it happened. How is God going to use this to glorify Him? Tough question to answer many, many times. So I want to leave you with 3 verses. 2 of them we've already discussed, and 1 new one. Philippians 3:13. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those which are behind and reaching forward to those which are ahead. Don't dwell on the past. Look to the future. Look to the good. And he talks about it in Philippians 4:8. Brethren, whether things are true, whether things are noble, whether things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report. If there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on those things. That will make you content. Look past your past. Look towards your future in a positive, ongoing thinking. Finally, in Hebrews 13:5, let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. And that content is not the same one as in the earlier verse, but he goes back to the base word, archeo, enough, sufficient. Let such things as you have be enough. For he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And if you really, really look at the whole picture, if God will never leave us nor forsake us, does anything else really matter? When you look at our life, and I've been on this world for 70 years, our life compared to eternity, it is just a sliver. We can get through this with God's help. We can get through this by focusing on Jesus. Not focusing on the news, not focusing on the web, focusing on Jesus. That is what you need to remember. That's what you need to take home. Thank you, Lord, for the time that you have given me to deliver your word. Thank you for speaking through me. Thank you to reaching out to all who are online and to all who are here. We give you the glory, Lord. We give you all of the honor. And in Jesus' name, I pray this. Hope you all have a great week for everything that you're doing, plan to do, and wherever the Lord leads you. One thing we'd ask is that we love your kids, but please pick them up on the way out. Thank you.